We're getting really emotional.
Oh, yeah, no, it's good. So it's always the way to go. It's always.
Andrew was going to take control.
Yes, right, yeah, it's okay, Paul, how do you cover, mate? How do you back?
I'm actually blaming Scoonsy because it was his team that helped me out.
Yeah.
So who's running this golf club?
Yeah.
Sing the little harp that's join your halo up.
Complete friendships. That was the only time I got right.
It's all right.
Yeah. So.
Talking to the old people.
Yeah.
Wonderful day. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back. Are we alive, Wayne? I'd just like to note we have all been home and had at least some sleep, I hope, before coming back again today. But today we are talking about rates review. The rates finance team. Welcome.
Thank you. Hey, look, sorry, apology. I was caught up with the CSOs talking about rates and there's stuff we're going to be talking about today and that, you know, so was, gets valid. But I'm blaming David there for his team's inquisitiveness. For customer service officers. You know, they're going to be the ones, I guess, at some.
I spoke to myself on this morning.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dave.
You're welcome. So we've got Stephen online. Yes. Say something.
There's something, turn something on.
There we go. Thank you. And we will go through, we've got a bit of a presentation. It's kind of at the pointy end now where we are looking at policies and want some feedback in relation to that, because that will form our the paper that will go to council for your adoption on the 29th for consultation. We will be talking mainly funding needs analysis today, bit of revenue and financing policy, and I'm going through Stephen's first introduction slide here. Our remission policies, which we had a bit of a chat about, and the very draft at the moment statement of proposal, which is the document that will go out and you will be consulting on. We'll be also talking about we've predicated all of this stuff on what we think is your preferred option. So we'll be talking a little bit about that. And then we will move into, I consider to be the highlight, a rates calculator. It will be good. I'm promising big here. So I guess Stephen and I will kind of interact as we go through. I think you're going to lead off, Stephen. Stephen's at home because of the, presume look, he's in a decent shirt, so it's a bit of weather, I'm suspecting. So Stephen's going to help us through the work online. Once we've kind of got to the 29th, or before, actually, once we've had this meeting, we will be putting the documentation up through to Jonathan Salter to review prior to your meeting on the 29th. So it will have had its legal review by that time as well. So I'll hand over to Stephen and he'll tell me when I need to jump in.
Good morning, everyone. Pity I can't be there, but it was a good call as the weather turned out. I can't work out how to get the screen up. Got to preview and bits and pieces.
You should just be able to see that. You see the slides?
I've only got a very small version of it. Myself and Stu and others on the screen. Can't work out what content. What was that, sorry?
Wayne's just working on it now for you.
Okay.
Hopefully we can make it a wee bit bigger.
Yeah. Anyhow, I've got a copy beside me, but can't see what's happening in the room.
You can see it as a large slide, so you'll be able to follow along. So long as you can see your notes, we've got it up on the big screen.
Yep, so we'll go with that. Just as Paul said, we've got an agenda there, and a rough time frame of how we think we'll do it. We think we'll get everyone will be quite excited about our calendar that the team has produced. It's something that I have not seen done as well as this anywhere else, and hopefully it's going to be a really useful tool for communicating. So next slide, very simple slide. So I've got a bunch of slides here that you've seen before, but as we move into a period of change, I just thought I'd quickly come back to it. So this rating review is full of process. It's process that keeps us safe. And today we're going to talk about some of the detail of the process. Next slide. That was our plan for going through the process, and we're up to nearly adopting for consultation. We'll consult for a month, followed by hearings, possibly some more modelling, depending on what comes out of the consultation, and eventually policies will be adopted and go into the LTP. I brought this slide in. Oh, next slide. I brought this slide in to just to remind us that while it's process is really important, people are really important as well, and we're going to talk a lot about our technical compliance element of it, but we're also about to walk into the hearts and minds part of it in a big way, and it's elected members talking to the community. It'll be the hearts and minds thing, more so than the technical stuff that we've been working on and that we'll be talking here. The process, the next slide. The process of setting rates is complex. We've got, and so in the middle, we've got the revenue and financing policy and the funding needs analysis at the top, and the funding impact statement and the rates remissions policies and a rates resolution. And as well as that, we've got to make sure that we coordinate things with the policies like the investment policy, liability policy, and development contributions policy. So we're dealing with all of that as we go. And we're going to be talking about some parts of that shortly. The this slide is probably difficult to see.
It's the next one, Wayne. Yeah, that's the...
Oh yeah, that one. Thank you. So the CODC is highlighted in yellow. Targeted rates are the dark blue, and the general rate is the green. And so that's the starting point. And bearing in mind this data is a little bit old, but basically it's about right for most councils. And yeah, so you can see that you've got quite a large targeted rate portion, and you're sitting at the top of the table for that reason. If we proceed with the option, one of the options we're presenting, then we're going to pop down to the bottom end of this table. We've got Kawerau. Can't quite read that myself. Slideshow. Current slideshow. Kawerau and Auckland and Taranaki Regional and Pautaki all down the bottom there. they're the ones with very small targeted rates, large general rates, and a UAGC, which most councils have on the right-hand side. So I think the message I want out of this, it's not where you are on the list, it's why you're on the list, and that's because the decision-making processes that you've been working through and the strategic direction you're looking for. This is a reminder that during consultation and matters like that, you'll get all sorts of stories told about how rates should be. And what this tells us is across the country, it can be quite different. And that's fine, being different. You're just going to be different in a different place. That's all I want to say on that. That takes us to our policies. And today we're going to look at the funding needs analysis, the revenue and financing policy, the rates for emissions policy, but we won't be looking at the funding impact statement or the rate statement, but we need all of those to get to set rates. Next slide. Right, Paul, do you want to start with this?
Sure. So currently we haven't, I guess we've assumed a proposed option, but we're kind of required to put this in a proposal and so section 82A and why we're choosing that proposal. So we have produced, all of our draft policies and the statement and proposal are based on option 1, which is, we're calling it a different, what are we calling it?
Rethinking.
Rethinking, that's right.
Yeah.
Rethinking our approach to rates. We didn't want to say capital value, be as harsh on that. So option 1 was rethinking our approach to rates. We've produced all of the documentation based on that as our preferred option. And that preferred option is 100% capital value for the general rate with no differentials. The UAGC at 30% and retaining targeted rates for waste management and grants, so ward-based grants. So everything that we've done and all the documentation is based on that. That's an assumption we've made from discussions that we've had with the council up to this point. I guess that's something that we need to, I guess, hear from council, whether that's what you're thinking or whether it's 2 or 3. I mean, they're all valid options that you could choose to be your preferred option. Though option 3, I would suggest that question would be, why are we doing this if option 3 was your preferred option? So we've kind of narrowed it down to option 1 and 2, with option 1 being the preferred option. Be happy to get some form of indication from the council whether that's the case or not. Is it the case? There's the question. Let's put that out there.
I wasn't a fan of differentials. Was as you pointed out, if it's option 3 is the preferred, then why are we doing it? So
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with that.
Okay.
Probably the cleanest and easiest to explain to people, and then
I guess the other thing is that because we have to go out and say this is what we're thinking, we're still not wedded to it, and we are able to listen to arguments that ratepayers put forward, and you can adjust your views accordingly when we go through the hearing process and when you get to make your final decision.
So that could look like people saying, well, we want to keep tourism as a targeted rate as well or something. Yeah.
Yeah, and you might then sit down and go through the pros and cons of keeping tourism as a targeted rate and say, yes, I agree with them. And that's the decision that you might want us to go away and model post the consultation period. You should be, and I think you are, open to any suggestions, because there will be people who come up and say, this doesn't fit my position because boom, boom, boom. And it might be that you say, okay, well, that's a valid thing, but I don't want to change the proposal, but I can deal with it in policy or a remission or something like that. So it's not necessarily we change the proposal, but we can adjust through other documents and that we have in the organisation. So I guess we're okay with option one as our preferred option. That's what we've built everything around. Yeah, that's cool. Anything else, Stephen, on that?
Nope. So that takes
Flick
us
it back.
to our first,
Give it
You're
back
right.
to you, Stephen.
yeah. That takes us to the funding needs analysis. This is a strategic process, a statutory process that we need to follow. It's pretty prescriptive. It is something that people who want to challenge us on, that's a place they tend to start when they get the lawyers involved. And it is fundamental to how we fund council. So that's all of council, not just, it's all the funding options that council has. It's not just about rates. And so that's what the policy is about. So next slide. So there's two parts to it. You've seen this before. There's the step one part. We look at the 5 things that the government has required in the legislation of us when we're making decisions. And then there's the funding, the step 2, which happens after step 1, which is for the overall allocation of the liability. Make some changes. At this stage, our process is that we haven't got anything substantively new to go into the step 2 option. I understand that you have copies of this. Is that right, Paul?
Funding needs analysis.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was sent late yesterday.
Yeah.
So whether it's available to be
It's available.
perused
Yep.
at a later date. Yeah.
Yep. Just on this slide, I've got a yellow bit. That's part of change in legislation. So this is the old or the current legislation, and I see Parliament has just moved forward a step on putting that legislation, the new legislation, into this. It in itself doesn't really change much that we're doing, except getting the words right when we're talking about it. Next slide. So these are the 5 attributes that we must consider when setting rates, when determining the funding needs of the organisation. And each one of these, there's no priority to them. They're all equal, and we have to consider each of them. So we have gone through the process, having listened to 4 previous workshops, having listened to you on your preferences and direction, and we've created the tables to implement this. So we look at community outcomes and how community outcomes and funding come together. benefit to either the whole of the community or parts of the community. Whether there is a benefit in a future year, and that becomes relevant in the OPEX part of the business more so than in the capital, part of the business rather than the OPEX. Exacerbated pays, so people who create problems for us, and the most obvious one of those is rubbish and rubbish collection. And then whether it's efficient to have a rating, in this case, a rating system or a funding system. And that's a pretty weak one, that one on the end. So that's what the funding needs analysis is. Next page. It's a repeat of step 2, so we don't need to go through that again. So the policy is broken into these 5 parts. We look specifically at each activity of council and assess for each activity what the sources of operating income are, and the detail on that for each activity. And then we do something similar for capital costs. We've got a banding system in the policy to help us decide whether something is high, low, or in the middle. And then we document the rationale of it. The big part of this is the schedule 1, and we'll come back to that. Next page. The funding sources are defined by the government, and this is the list of funding sources, and it's these items that we're thinking about when we're looking at our funding needs analysis. So we need to have a statement of our valuation system, any rating differentials that we might have, the uniform general rate and the general rates in there, as well as considering targeted rates, lump sums, fees and charges, interest dividends, borrowing, asset sales, development contributions, and financial contributions, grants and subsidies, and anything else. So that's the list that we have focused on. It is useful to stick to what the legislation is. It sits more comfortably with doing what the legislation does. When you start adding things to it that are outside the legislation, it makes it a bit muddy and unsure. Because of the amount of interest that this ends up getting, should things go, should people decide to challenge any decisions you make. Next slide. That's the list of activities that is in the policy. It's in the revenue financing policy as well. There's been some moderation to what was in the last LTP. A couple of areas got a little bit detailed in that. So taking away waters, of course, out of there, that's what we've got less. Do you want to say anything on that, Paul?
No, I think what we've tried to do is, you note that these are kind of at a higher level. We haven't gone down and identified every library, every swimming pool. We've grouped them up. The other thing we have done in terms of you'll note forestry is not in there. What we're doing with forestry is we're actually treating it as part of property. So it's more of the fact that we have trees on our land rather than we've got commercial forests. So we're we're just treating it all as property. I note some smiles. I guess that's from yesterday. So you won't see that there. We're just grouping it up, and you can group them into like areas. So you don't have to do an analysis on each bit of the service that you provide. So each swimming pool, etc. Those types of things.
Yes, Stephen and Paul, and on the government's changes around the reporting against activities, how they're doing that grouping, how does that relate to this?
We can group these how we want to, because what the government is saying in terms of the new reporting areas, that's what they want to see. That shouldn't necessarily change how we run our business. So we can still analyse it here, and this is what we currently do, rather than break it into those 8. And if we did break it into those 8 and said that's how we want to run our business, we would just take the bits from
Constituent part, yeah.
and move it to where it needs to be. But I don't think that. I think there'll be some changes in the way we prepare, and
LTP or?
Yeah, our LTP will change in terms of what people see as the groups of activities, but that won't necessarily mean that we have to change how we do it internally to run our business. And yeah, so I think it's not going to impact this.
Can I just add, the LTP working group are currently looking at it as to a view as to whether or not we think we should submit, which would be by 31st of July. So if the group gets together and we think that there are some things we should submit on, our plan was to circulate that to councillors and then bring that to the 29th of July meeting. So we'll work on that next week.
I mean, and just as an aside, the government is sort of trying to establish a consistency to how councillors report against activities, because we all they're establishing some.
Compare us.
Yes, it is, so they can compare apples with apples.
Just, Stephen mentioned that there's going to there's the potential for having those well-beings removed. And obviously with different legislation about to be dropped in and who knows what else. Is there going to be any, is there anything that we are going to need to do in that space with any changes that are afoot? Is there anything, any adjustments we will need to make, I guess? As to where we are in the process, or what could trip us up right down the track because there's something new being dropped in?
I think what we need to make sure is that we cover the new stuff that gets dropped in. The well-beings that we've talked about, the council in the past has resolved that that's what they want to do, and they have gone through a process of comparing the new legislation with what they currently do, and we're seeing that there's not a great deal of difference. So unless Stephen's got anything to add, I don't think that us setting, I mean, that bit of the legislation changes, we will have to comply with it, absolutely. I don't think that that's going to change the rest of the analysis for the activities that you'll see. I think that Section 101 won't change dramatically. They might turn around and say, refer to Section 11 or something like that, and we have to then take into account all of the things that they talk about in there, which most of the stuff we do anyway is covered in good infrastructure, which includes pools, parks, libraries, reserves, all of that carry-on's already covered in there. It's just going to be the wording. And at this point in time, we have got the legislation that we've got. When it changes, we'll deal with it.
That's systems improvement bill.
Yeah.
Where is it at?
Oh, it should be passed shortly. This is something that's meant to be.
So those 4
It's not
well,
Christmas.
rather than give effect to you, not compulsory, is that correct?
They've been removed from the legislation.
Entirely.
But if you look at our outcomes,
Yeah.
we've reframed them.
Yeah.
So that you could say they look similar, but I think all councils are going to be, will be massaging those because they think that's really important for their communities. They just don't want to run foul of the law.
Right.
Yeah, I guess, again, it will be whether the section 101, which is the funding section for us, changes to specifically refer back to the new legislation, or whether they're just going to keep it kind of at a high level. You've got to consider all of these things, which I think is, where are we talking about? Have we got that? Yeah. So the community outcomes may change. Who benefits absolutely won't change, I don't think. Well, no, I don't think it will not change, because that's the whole purpose of what we do. Who we provide benefits to people. The when, the exacerbator, and the efficiency of funding will all remain the same. It will just be whether the community outcomes are tweaked. And that's what I was saying, and Peter's reinforced it, is that the council went through this process last council, I think, when we were talking, last LTP, when we were talking about this is coming, how do we adjust? And they've adjusted their outcomes to reflect, it might not reflect it word for word, and I don't think it's going to be necessarily a big job to reflect that. But I think that the rest of it, 101, won't change what we do. Would that be fair, Stephen?
Yeah, activities. So as I understand it, the government is proposing that groups of activities are going to be looked into, and they're going to put that through a regulatory process, which is not in the legislation, as I understand it. So that's going to take time. Activities themselves have been in the legislation for a long time, and they're in this funding needs analysis process. They're the ones that count, not the grouping of them. So there's going to be some things moving. I think one of the reasons we're doing our rates review is that there's a lot happening in a lot of different places. There's water and other things happening as well. And we're going to have to adjust for those when those things come up. That's just the nature of where local government is at for now. And so the whole purpose of what we've been trying to do here, along with equity, and is to make sure that we can keep the ship running by having good policies in place that we can change should they need to change. Shall we move on? Yep. So this is what there's one of these for each activity, and this is what they look like. This is a roading one, and on the right hand side is the result. We'll have for roading, having considered all these 5 things and documented our rationale, we end up deciding what the funding sources are. And in this case, for roading, grants and subsidy are a big item, and general rate is a big item. So they're in the moderate space, and then we're getting some money for roading on fees and charges. And then the one on the bottom, unlikely. The reality is things come along during the course of a year that means that something that is unlikely pops in. And so that's just recognising that there are other sources of funding that you will take should someone offer it to you. You can't turn something around because it's not in the policy. So all of these are in the document, and in the revenue and financing policy, there is a summary of the outcomes of what's in this right-hand column. We're not going to go through each of these slides, but go to the next slide, 18. It's 18 on my list anyway. What's that say? Environment. Yeah, so this one is different because it's got targeted rates. So this is our rubbish collection. So you see that's high targeted rates and low grant subsidies and fees and charges for that activity. The only other activity that has targeted rates on it is the grants for community boards, and that also has targeted rates. Otherwise, everyone else has general rates. We don't have to go into any more detail than whether we're using a targeted rate, general rate, or one of the other funding sources that I listed before. So we've got all of them in the slides. If anyone wants to stop and talk about or ask about any one of these, I've got nothing to say anymore on this part of it.
That was part of the FNA that was sent yesterday. So again, if you've got any questions that come out of when you get some time to look at it in detail, let us know and we'll answer what we need. We can. But I think the important bit is that you can see the 5 headings. It details what we're thinking, and then at the end of the day, you get to make the call on the 6th option, which is step 2, effectively. That's flows into this document here.
That's the process that we've just flicked through. Every council's doing that, and it's basically that table of where everyone was in that table of general rate and targeted rates and UAGC. That comes from this data that we've just gone through. And that data then flows into the revenue and financing policy. It's a bit odd in that it's, when you're working on this, it's a backwards and forwards thing between the two policies so that they make sense. Again, a copy of this has been sent out just recently, so not got any. You've not had a great chance to read it, is what I understand. Yep. Okay, so next slide. So we start. This is the main matters in the revenue and financing policy, and so funding principles and financial management. Let me find document.
In this draft policy, basic principles include sharing costs across the district, but consideration of vulnerable residents, fairness and transparency. One thing which I was raised with me early on, and I guess I know where we're going is we're trying to simplify the rates bill, so it's just general rate. How does that fit with that transparency thing? Because I've heard from people that they actually like to see breakdown in the.
Yep. What we decided early on, and I think Stephen made this point in one of the early workshops, is the rates invoice is not the tool to communicate what we do and how we spend money. That's you need to get some comms out there for that. So that is the rating system needs to be transparent. So I need to be able to come to you and say, for argument's sake, libraries use is 5% of our total cost, total rates, say that. therefore 5% of your rates bill pays for libraries. And I think that the issue is when you end up with, because we do have 20 or 30 rating types, you end up with, you know, so much transparency that you're paying $1.27 towards tourism.
I
don't think that's the way we should. I don't think we should be communicating through the invoice. I think that needs to be done outside of that process. And I think that there is a whole new realm of stuff that we're going to have to start putting out to be as transparent as we possibly can be.
Yeah, I understand that. I still think some people will moan that they don't see on the rates bill.
Absolutely, and I think that is an exercise in changing people's thought patterns, because you don't necessarily, when you get your invoice for the power, you know, it's just the facts of this is what it is. You don't necessarily, I don't know because I don't have an irrigation or whatever, but you know, it will just tell you what you used and what the price is. You don't necessarily get much more detail than that, or your any other bills that you might get. I think for us, it will do away with, I think, the argument that why am I paying $121 for libraries? I don't use them. We get the opportunity then to extol the benefits of having libraries. You know, you pay 5% to libraries, but kids get et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, so this will be further down the track, but hypothetically, you could have a pie chart to explain that on the rates bill.
And I think when we looked at the last consultation document, you can break down the activities that council say and say for every dollar you spend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
This would be X, and so we can give that level of visibility.
Yes, I just know from a public meeting, almost at the last LTP and TVET, people didn't like the fact that the community facilities charge was bundled into one, whereas it used to be pools were separated out. You know, just small things like that. And then I heard it on Monday, someone going on about the tourism rate because they like to see what they're paying for tourism, you know, and so I get all that.
Get fixated on that tourism rate.
Yeah.
It would be great to have if every time we sent people a bill, we had that graphic that we had that ties into that with this is what your rates pay for, and there's 20 different little boxes with pictures. As more people move on to digital emailed rates bills, it'd be easy enough to hyperlink. I want to know more about where my rates go. I care. And then it's leading you to the additional information around that communication and education.
I'm saying yes. I'm probably not. I don't have any IT people here, so but I don't see why not.
But it could be as simple as a pie chart going for every rate dollar.
Yeah, but again, I think that then comes back to how we want to put that message out and when, because if we're limiting it to once every 3 months with a rates invoice, we could be using different methods across different times or regularly or whatever to get our message across in relation to that. So
for 75-80% of people, they get the rates bill, they pay it.
Yep.
There are some people that fixate over their rates bill, and I guess that, and like I agree with you, we should articulate it in another means, but just putting it out there, people won't like the fact that it's just bundled into a general rate.
So from a couple of practicalities, so your actual rates invoice, there is legislation that says what we have to put on there.
Yeah.
There's only so much space on an invoice.
Yeah.
So currently with people who get their invoices emailed, there are currently hyperlinks on there to go if you want to sign up for direct debit or anything like that. So there's no problem putting in a link to our website to say, here's how your rates are spent.
Yeah. And in the long term, that increased communication would be great, because if you're a renter, you don't get the bill, you just get bill handed on. So it's explained to all our community where the money goes, value of their input.
Stephen, you want to carry on?
Yeah, okay. So the draft, these draft policies will remain draft, by the way, right through the process. You'll adopt the revenue and financing policy at the same time or just before you adopt the finished LTP. So there will be things that happen between now and adoption of the LTP where there may need to be changes to what we're preparing here. So what we've prepared here is based on the information we have now. Funding needs, funding principles, part of what's there. It covers off the 5 things from the funding needs analysis. It talks about the funding activities being complex and notes that that complexity within the legislation. There's a lot of things that may need to be considered, such as the legal situation, but also social situations, competition, affordability, efficiency, equity, intergenerational equity, transparency, accountability, and benefits. So there's a list of those things that are in there that are crossing your mind when you're making a funding decision. There's a statement here that Council wants a rating system to focus on equity between ratepayers. So that's something that's come out of the conversations we've had with you, and that it is flexible. Talked about that already. Subsidies and grants and other income is explored before you use rates. Each generation should pay for its fair share of investment, and that may require borrowing. Capital expenditures to replace assets will be projected over the life of the asset, and borrowing may deal with shortfall there. Yeah, so there's some things there that are statements that should resonate well with you. And then we get into the policy part of it. The policy part of it focuses initially, we're required to focus on operating costs and also capital expenditure. That's a requirement of the legislation, and as a preference, Council for operating expenditure will firstly look towards fees and charges, grants, sponsorships, targeted rates, and general rates. Be interesting to watch what happens in Thames Coromandel, because I understand they're putting a whole lot of fees up in order to keep their rates down. So that'll be interesting. See how that goes. And they would be documenting that in a policy such as this. In the case, and so the document then goes through and looks at all the funding mechanisms. So the list of funding mechanisms that I showed you before that were statutory matters. Each of these, we've written we've written down how this supports what Centro Otago wants to do. what options it has. So when it says you can have user fees and charges, it then goes on to talk about the vast array of fees and charges that you might have from entry fees, hireage, renting, leasing, buildings, permits, regulatory stuff, disposal fees, deposits, memberships. There's a potential whole list of things there. Again, there's a little bit of making this look complex because it is complex. We don't want to make it look so easy that someone that's reviewing us in the future decides that they can do this themselves. It's really important that councils get to make these decisions. That's provided for. The council decides what's appropriate in section 101, and we need to not give that away easily. Yeah, so it then goes through the list when we would use grants, sponsorship, subsidies, investment income, funding, financial contributions and development contributions, asset sales. The asset sales one that's here has to line up with the investment policy, and so that's where those connections go across everything. Then eventually we come down the list, we come to rates. There's a table in here that has all of the activities that we looked at before, and it summarise it, which is what's required by the law, that we summarise that. So you at a glance on that table, you can see that there's a high number of rates that are general rate. There's two targeted rates, and there's a fair amount of fees and charges and grants and subsidies, but at the lower end rather than the high end in there. And then it goes on to capital expenditure, fees and charges, grants and subsidies, and then you're adding.
Curtis has got a question, Stephen.
Yeah.
Was for this team here, what's the rationale between changing the tourism rate from targeted to general?
The rates review
Yeah.
itself. So it's the options that we've put forward.
Yeah, I suppose, sorry, in this table here, it's given a high general high, but in the past it's been a targeted rate. So why are we now classifying it?
Oh, so this will be based on the proposed options that we're putting forward in the rates review. So it's all to align with our proposed options. So we have to sort of put it in how we're going to.
Yeah, I say not in how we've previously seen it, I guess. Yeah, right.
Yes.
So that table kind of reflects what we talked about in the funding needs analysis, which is where you go through all of your activities.
Yes.
And say, and what we've talked about in the past is, simplifying and making everything.
Yeah.
And that's why it's sitting in the general rate and target rates there. Because that's what we're proposing to do.
Yes. And I guess backing it up, the rationale behind why it's changed apart from simplification.
We'd have to review the funding needs analysis, but that was part of the whole process.
Yeah, I get that.
Simplify it.
Because if you assess it on.
I mean, you could argue that why are we doing that for activities? Libraries, for argument's sake, are a targeted rate. Why are we moving that to a general rate? And we look, it's part of the simplicity process. We want to minimise the number of rates, and I guess from a going forward perspective, that the ability to run things through the general rate gives you the ability to manipulate through UAGC's down where you can't put it up because we're going to 30%. So you can shift rates around a little bit that way, where you've got a fixed target, fixed charge, you're kind of limited to the impact on ratepayers of that fixed charge. We don't talk about that in this type of thing because it doesn't impact that, but it is more of a transparent simplicity.
Yes, simplicity is the main, rather than a different rationale.
Because we've looked at it, we want it simple, flexible, future proof. They were the things that we were looking at. Proposal anyway, so.
And how do you,
They're quite rigid, aren't they? Because they are so specific.
Yeah.
And this council had lots of them, that your ability to make decisions is constrained because it's a targeted rate in a sense. But I guess the purpose though is going forward, because it's in the general rate, how do you then articulate, and it goes back to your previous conversation, what someone would pay for tourism?
Yeah. I mean, you could, if you wanted to, target rate on a variable basis and have the same impact as having it in the
general rate? Yeah.
Uh,
But is that not how it is at the moment?
It is, but it's capital value based, I think. And
Yes, it is capital value based and it's differentiated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so we've looked at the principle of what makes you different.
Yeah.
So why differentiate for a start?
Yeah.
It's on capital value anyway,
Yeah.
which we're moving to.
Potentially.
Yeah, good point. No decisions here. So that's two of the options is to move to capital value, which
Yeah.
it's already in.
Yeah.
If you remove the
Differential.
differential, it can logically fit in the general rate because effectively it is is exactly the same basis as the general rate.
Yeah, I guess
But then you've got to ask the question, is there a need for a targeted rate and what is that need?
having it targeted with the differentials, I view it as quite a fair rate. And that's someone at the back of Horse Creek.
Yep.
Who probably doesn't receive a lot of tourism benefit is paying proportionally to the activity they receive.
Yeah. Then, and it's probably the time to start this.
No, I know it's not. I know it's not.
You could argue that about
A lot of
absolutely
things, yeah, I know.
everything we
But
provide.
Yeah, 100%. You're opening a can of worms. I get that.
And that's where you've said right from the outset, there's going to be winners and losers.
Yeah.
There's going to be positives and negatives, literally for every single ratepayer.
So that one I single out because I see it as a very fair one as the status quo. And in some ways, in my mind, we're making it less fair than the proposal.
I guess, and I think you made the comment about
Yeah.
a couple of meetings ago about let the capital value
Determine it. Yeah, you're
determine
right.
it. So
Contradicting myself.
no, but that's the
Okay.
kind of, as you go through that thought process, those are the types of things that you will face when you go out and explain it. And you have to weigh those up. And what you're saying is, I think what the council's saying is in terms of preferred option is we're saying nobody's different for a start. So if nobody's different, no differentials. If you go down that track, they're already on capital value. So really all we're doing is keeping a targeted rate.
Getting rid of the differential and bundling it into the general. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're arguing over the differentials, nothing more.
That's and what you're saying is the differentials gives it its fairness. But you've said
CV does the fairness.
Yeah.
Involved. Yeah, that's fair.
sorry, Stephen,
Right.
away you go.
Yep, back to capital side of it. So the big difference here is bringing in borrowing and development contributions and financial contributions. And again, going through all the activities, all of the funding options and talking about how we might use them. Really important thing is to use words that create for things to be open. Don't close your policy down so that a year later you're suddenly having to change the policy because something new popped up. So don't have any definites in the list. After we've had a look at the capital expenditure and the processes there, we go to the overall funding needs, which is this part of the legislation that is about to change. Not for the first time. It's happened about 5 times that different governments have changed those same words. And so this is the 1013B analysis, and it goes through a whole bunch of things that are everyday activity, but they really are changing how we do things. And you have things in there such as we give people remissions or discounts or waiver of fees. That's sitting in here as well. And it was in the Wairau case, it was in this section that they talked about the negative outcomes coming from forestry, and it was those outcomes that led them to make that decision. We haven't got any decisions of that sort in the proposals and what we're preparing at the moment to go to consultation. But you never know what's going to come out at the end of the consultation process. And maybe we are looking at things to go in here that are a little bit more different from these administration type ones that are here. And then we go into some more detail on the rates. There's a list of the activities here under the general rates. It's technically not required, but in the it's in here for those that want to read this policy in detail. There's a list of what the activities are that are funded from the general rate. And then there's a long list of references in there just to make a point that this document and the other documents don't they don't sit alone. They're there with everything else. So that's all I want to say for now on the revenue financing policy, which leaves us with
could I just
more policy.
ask you? I just ask you one thing. We're talking about activities that we currently have, and you talked about Wairau, where you put the negative effects. I'm sure that if Stu was here, he'd be talking about solar farms and mining. We have resource consents for those things in play, but we don't actually have those activities. Well, we do have small mining activities. Is this a place that you can be looking at potential future activities, or would you suggest leaving those until those activities come?
Yeah, there's a lot of work to go under the, so to speak. This policy is going to go through an LTP process, and then it's exists for 3 years. You have to consult on a change to the policy. So there is a potential conversation as to whether there is something that could be in here. Yeah.
Would that come from the community during the consultation on the rates review, or is it something that we
lead.
You're choosing to?
Would we have it as a question within the, you know, to prompt that discussion? Because if it's absent, we might not get it back. Do we have to prompt that as a consideration? Say, what are your thoughts on?
New industries.
Yeah.
Whatever, yeah.
The data center, what is it, cheapest? The big fish. Big fish.
Do you have any thoughts on that, Stephen?
Look, those are your choices. The,
Scare them off.
there's been a lot of conversation with the community on the solar for some time. There's going to be a lot of conversation around the utilities as part of this process. There's going to be all of the negative statements coming from people around the use of capital value and that they're going to tell us that we're taking more money off them and things like that, which is not what the data is saying. So, you know,
On that, just a question in relation to on relation to what we were just saying, especially with the solar side of things, presumably, or can you advise if there is a whole lot of solar panels put onto a property, that is a capital improvement to the, is it?
It's not rateable.
Not a rateable. So that's where we have,
Valuation rules and the
Yeah.
valuers have to follow.
The chattels though, I thought so.
They are chattels, yeah, at this stage, but that might, like, as more solar farms come into play, the valuer general might have to reassess how they are valued.
so
That
on,
improvements
changes.
for chattels.
yeah, so on that basis then, I'm thinking about sequencing with what we're doing through this process and then LTP, what's the processing, what's the steps?
This to the LTP.
Yeah,
So we'll go through this process.
and then
And then
if there's something that falls out of this process that would need to be addressed in the
this
LTP.
document,
Okay.
the revenue and financing policy, then has to go through another, effectively, we have to consult on it again as part of, and we will as part of the LTP.
yeah, you're going to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're going to have to.
Okay.
I guess my question relates to almost future proofing what we might want to do rather than
Yeah.
delaying it for 3 years.
Yeah, because then you got to go through it all again.
And we'll firm up on that and come back to council.
But it doesn't sound unreasonable that we can pose it as a question.
That doesn't sound unreasonable at all.
I mean, it's your consultation. You can put whatever questions you like in there. But the proposal though is capital value.
Yeah.
You know, they're the proposals that we're asking. I think that
Yeah.
it might be a separate part of it to inform you as to what you might want to do here.
Do we not need to have a justification around the extra costs they're imposing on council as a reason for a differential?
Oh, yeah, I mean, what you would then do is go through the same process that you've looked at, which is, okay, what additional, is there any additional cost to council?
Yeah.
It's the same with your forestry stuff, you know, we've talked about that. You would go through that process when you sort of sit down and think about.
Because I put them in that question as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how you would decide on how you want to set your rates at what levels and incorporating that again. You can do that. And it's really going through that process to firm up your views on it and getting those documented so that it's not just we're doing it because we can type.
Yeah, when it comes back for deliberations and we just chuck it in because we feel like it.
Thanks, Stephen.
Right, last policy is the remissions policy. Paul, do you want to
Yeah, I can flick through this if you like. There are, a remissions policy is one of the statutory. We also deal with, and we've sent out to you the postponement policy and Maori freehold land policy, which those three we're required to do. The remissions policy is probably the most important one. Postponement is, the rates liability doesn't go away. It's just getting postponed for people. And we don't have any Maori freehold land, so that doesn't come into play. But this one here is where, as it says there, it modifies the rates that people pay. And if it modifies the rates that people pay, it then imposes a further burden on other people because we need to collect what we need to collect, kind of thing. Another next slide, thanks, Wayne. It deals with, it allows you to make changes to your rating system that you don't, and you don't need to change your rating system to do it. So we deal with things like penalties when people, there are remissions on various situations for penalties, for argument's sake, where death of a close family member has delayed you paying your rates, we can remit the penalties. Those are the types of things that it gives the staff the ability to do. It's remission of uniform annual charges and fixed targeted rates for contiguous properties. That's in the law. We do remissions on the basis of extreme financial hardship. I think we've only ever done one. That was yeah, and that was a couple of years ago. It was a hell of a process. But it gives us that ability where people are experiencing that. We've also got a remission for rates on rural land with a capital value less than $1,000. There are some very small blocks, landlocked type of thing that it costs us more to send the rates invoice out than it would be that we collect. So we've got a remission there. We've got remissions of rates on land that is protected for natural, historical, cultural conservation purposes. We also have remission of rates on heritage buildings, community, sporting and other organisations remission, which is what Saskia was talking about yesterday. We've got land affected by natural disasters, and what we've tried to do in respect of that is it's dealing with the more localised disaster rather than a district-wide, because the government will step in. If it's district-wide, then it's beyond our abilities. So this is, say, a localised, so we had a slip somewhere that took out someone's productive land. Should we be rating on that if they can't now use their land anymore, even though there's a title still there? So that's what those remissions are for, rather than the larger district-wide stuff. And we have a remission on rates where the rating unit spans a district electoral boundary. There are actually 4 properties in our district that covers.
That has been applied.
Yeah. What that actually does is the rating unit that sits in the other district collects rates partially on the property, and the remission that we give means that that piece of land, there are no rates on it. So what we would like to be talking about is, do you still want that in place? Because these are the types of things that we should be looking at changing now for consultation. So effectively, the 4, who are the 4? Knockamai Station is one of them.
Couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
McElroy's, when we shouldn't be selling them. There's around Beaumont. So there's 4 of them. And what that means is the piece of land in our patch doesn't attract any rates. So they are getting that bit rates free effectively. So whether we want to put that in place, and I know we did have a discussion around one of those for when they applied, and that the LTP came in and we changed the rates remission policy. And we've talked a little bit about the community and sporting and other organisations about effectively means testing those. So whether we want to reflect that in the answer yesterday was yes, we do. We need to start thinking about how well off, well, not well off, that's a bad word. We're just looking at what their assets are for the remission that they're applying for, because it doesn't make sense, or is it fair that a national organisation that is a community sporting or another organisation can come along and ask for a remission, which means all our ratepayers end up paying for that. So those are the types of things we need to.
That could be a
This-
question for people. Is that how they want their, I mean, that could be something that people might want to have a say about, and not everyone might have a sporting or some kind of other activity that actually is precious to them, that.
Yep.
Especially in a small community.
Yeah, it is. Is this where we'll also start talking about if a national register of Airbnbs arrives and how we might deal with that? How quickly do we need to be starting to work on that?
I'm not sure that's a remission.
No, that
We
would
should
be a
put it-
remission, but to sit in amongst this suite of documents.
Yep.
I'm guessing it will take a while to put together if a register comes out, but I
And I think
think we need
that,
to be thinking about it.
yeah, those types of things, we can amend those policies or create new ones. And if we want to go and consult, and we probably should, if we've got a register and this is going to impact the group of ratepayers, we would go out and consult separately on that.
Under the postponement rates, if you've got to have owned the unit for at least 5 years, your mortgage, that's in the timing you're most indebted. What's the 5 years in there?
I guess the 5 years is in there because we don't want people, I mean, if you've gone and got yourself into a problem straight away.
It might, but this is like through your fault. You might become injured, something happens, you have extreme financial.
Then it kicks into,
Yeah,
I mean, postponement currently,
just that shuts you out. It's not within 5 years. It's just not even an
yeah,
option.
I think if you're looking at postponement policy, it's more about, it's all about your ability to pay, I guess. If that situation occurred where you couldn't work, I would say that's more of a rates remission thing rather than a postponement. If someone came to us and said, I need to postpone my rates,
Yeah.
then there's no discussion around that. That's where you need the rules, apply the rules, and it happens automatically. I think.
So there are other options for them.
Yeah, but if you wanted to look at that and say, well, 5 years is too much, this is the time that you might want to change that.
It seems like it's a convenient period of time. Just 5 years.
Yes.
So there may have been a reason, a good statutory reason or a reason for it.
I think we've just put that in the.
Policy
Yeah.
rather than a.
Yes. So I mean, as I say, if you were inclined to say 5 years is too long, I mean, if you've got to have a period potentially, and something might happen to somebody outside of that period anyway. The only way to get around that is to turn around and say there is no statutory limit. If you're within the area, you're within the area. And
Yes, so it doesn't need a time frame on it.
yeah, but that's a conversation that you can have. So next slide, thanks, Wayne. So what might we change? As I've talked about, the property spanning electoral boundaries, we put in specifically because we had an application. I guess my question is that still valid for for you, for the council, because the argument that, and the recommendation that we put up was that it shouldn't be allowed, because you've got this issue around taxation and representation. If you are a landowner within our district, you get to vote in our district. If you're not paying anything in our district, there's a disconnect between your representation and taxation there. Even people who you rent properties get a vote in our district. They indirectly pay rates through the property owner.
So what you're saying is that even though if there was, in those circumstances, those people are still listed as a property owner.
In our district, yes. Yep. Yep.
The original application was quite a small plan as well.
Yeah.
Some of the other ones we have are quite sizable.
Okay.
That's the difference.
Yeah.
When we looked at that original one, it was tiny, it wasn't accessible,
No, it
it
was
was, you know, a very small percentage of the total property. But if you start to get into that situation where you've got a half and
Yeah.
half or a,
Yeah.
you know, significant hole on one side.
And that's why at the time, I think we recommended that the UAGC remain in place to represent paying something, because it's on a uniform basis. And that was when we had $120 odd UAGC. If whichever option we choose, the UAGC is going to head up towards $1,000, $1,100 type of thing. So it makes it a little bit different in terms of the collection of that. And maybe it is a thing where we could remit the general rate, but keep the uniform annual general charge, those types of things.
You could have a percentage remission, so instead of 100%, you could do
You could do 50.
50 or 70 or things.
You can set the parameters for that. You don't have to, it's not an all or nothing. Again, what you've got to remember is that whatever you set, someone else has got to pay.
How does that, just out of interest, how does that, and this is not in relation to electoral boundaries, but how does that work when you've got big rural properties that might have 5,000 acres in one block, another 5,000 acres in another, but they're under separate titles, but they run as one property, they'll be paying 2 UAGC.
Mate, that's the contiguous rules.
That's the
So
contiguous.
So if they share a boundary,
Yeah.
then that's one property. If they don't share a boundary, it's 2 separate rating
Yeah.
units, and so the remission doesn't apply.
If they're run
If
as
they-
one unit.
If they share a boundary.
and the
So
boundaries.
there's 3
yeah.
conditions that have
Yeah.
to be met, and it's a 1 and 2 and 3, not a 1 or 2 or 3. So all 3, they have to be owned by the same people. They have to share a boundary, and they have to be used for the same purpose as one rating unit. So one farming operation, for example. But if
They-
they're not on the same boundary, then the section doesn't apply.
They can be separated by a road or stream, or so those separations that would create 2 titles are treated as a contiguous. So, you know, if you've got family trust running one block and a partnership running another block, even though they're running the same thing, they're different. But in generally, we do have a few that are contiguous, so they do lose their UAGC charge and other
On one.
on
On
one.
one.
They have to pay 1 UAGC. So if they've got 3 properties that are contiguous, they still they pay 1. So I guess that's the question. Do we want to have a look at changing? Is there an appetite for changing that? Yeah. We'll need to finalise this. And I know it's not a decision, Wayne.
Suppose that the example cited, are we missing out on significant portions of income? I mean, the only time this has been discussed here was that example which you already talked about. And we made a decision because it was so insignificant that we didn't do anything about it. Are the other examples significant?
So one of them, for example, I won't give you details, but the capital value of this particular rating unit is 3.3. No, that's not that one. Let's not tell lies. There's one of them that's probably got a capital value of around $600,000.
600,000.
The portion that's on our side or for the totality of
The
this,
portion on our side on their rating unit here.
different from the previous.
It's different from 15,000.
I think we need something that is flexible enough to address what we addressed last time.
Yeah.
But also enables us to collect the appropriate
Yeah.
rates from property owners that are in our district.
I guess the other argument that was put up was they don't use our services. By moving to a more general rate focused at CB at $600,000, it's not going to be a significant chunk of change that they will be paying. They'll be paying the UAGC and a little bit on top for the capital value. Previous to that, they would have been paying a targeted rate for tourism. They would have been, paying for our libraries, and which they will still do as part of the rating, but it wasn't specifically on your rates bill. So I would expect their bill would be a lot lower than what they would have paid if we hadn't had that under the old system. What do you?
Do we know how many properties actually have this issue? 4
Well,
properties.
those are the 4 properties that we've had applications for. There might be other properties that could be effective. So this is capital value.
And I guess we don't want to get into that argument of people saying, oh, but we don't use your services, because then you might get someone who lives in the middle of Cromwell who says, oh, but I live in Queenstown, so I don't use Cromwell services, or I work in Wanaka, so I'm not.
Yep.
I think we want to avoid that. I don't use the library, so why should I pay for it?
Yeah. I guess the answer is to that, but you can.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the point.
The one that Kelly's just showed me is about three odd million.
So it's $3.5 million capital value. So that's $6,800 of rates that have been remitted.
Well, it's a significant chunk of change, isn't it? It needs to be clarified and policy reflecting that, give us the opportunity. Currently, we're remitting it carte blanche. Yeah. Team, more work to do on this one.
I just think, how would the rest of our ratepayer base feel if they knew that there was a $15,000 in a little tiny patch because of a fence line out the back of somewhere, which has got nothing, as one thing? Because it'll probably cost us more to send a stamp to get them to do that. Whereas there's quite a significant difference.
We're paying for weed control, pest control, getting benefits out of that. Yes. Because I'm, the Glen coming in the back of us.
Does the regional council have
The back of the-
similar policies?
Not that I'm aware of, but
Yeah, I'm not sure.
the thing is the region, like for some of our boundary ones would still fall in like a
Yeah,
Otago Regional Council.
Yeah.
Things, so their rates might not affect them. If it went to Southland,
But there could be anything, Otago, Southland
Absolutely.
wide,
Otago, South,
very much so.
Taki, Clutha.
Yeah.
But that one you're talking about's at Miller's Flat, isn't it, or down on the Clutha boundary?
One of them is, yeah,
One of them is,
yeah, because they pay rates to CDC.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the other thing looking at all those is that what happens if we go through the next stage of our amalgamation talk? It all becomes one anyway, so it'll be picked up then.
That would depend on who we amalgamate with.
Yeah.
If that's the case.
Yeah.
It may not, and again, I think that it's too up in the air at the moment to make a call on where we might land on amalgamation. And I think we've just got to box on and do what we need to do. And if and when we get amalgamated, all of these policies will be changed anyway by someone else to reflect that.
So when it just says 100, where it goes over, then 100% rates permission will be granted. Just want to change it to can be granted. Do we want the option to be able to charge it if we choose?
And I guess it's like, is there parameters that you want to indicate to people?
We'd have to create
That
those,
you would
yes.
need to pay a minimum rate or,
Yeah. Other than can't.
yeah.
So that when she said if it costs us more to send the letter to collect it, then maybe it's not worth it, but there probably does need to be a middle ground and some parameters around what we are wanting to achieve and what's not actually worth it for the time spent to recover that.
Okay, that's cool. Good. Thank you for that. And the last thing is the inclusion of criteria. We talked about that. I think that there's a desire to put something in there that gives us the ability to decline if we feel we can or want to. So we'll change that as well.
Other organisations. So we do have currently 4 properties owned by St John Ambulance that have had a 50% remission for as long as I've been here. Does that still fit within your other organisations as a community organisation, given that they are a national body and have other funding sources? So those sorts of organisations, that do they need to be included, excluded, that sort of thing?
I think the public would probably be happy enough with that one. It's not
Because
like everybody thinks St John's is rolling in.
you don't have to be a
spare
member.
cash. Yeah.
Yeah, so we could just make it so that organisation like St John would fit under this policy. We can have that documented somewhere, because
St John should be, St John should be paying full rates of social fire and emergency.
leave fire and emergency is, but I don't, but St John is not.
Well, St John should be.
Teachers and schools aren't
Especially in our
raising up.
community,
No, they're not,
especially in our community anyway. They can target them in the Minnetonka. They got lots of money sitting in their banks accounts. They're like a bloody cult, St John's. They just hoover up money. They're sitting on massive piles of reserves.
A very mean thing to say about
The
Duncan, who
neighbours
sits
on it.
beside you at the table.
Well, but that's the issue, right? It's a bit like Plunkett. The money gets taken out of our community, goes in there, St John's and Auckland and Wellington, and it sits in a massive pot of money. So the community raise funds in here, and it doesn't get spent in the community. They sit on huge reserves, even in the Minnetonka. Trust me. I've seen the balance sheet. So I just think they're a classic organisation across New Zealand, that the government are funding a part of it, but also massive volunteers, and they should be paying a full rate.
Yeah.
Bring it back to the table.
And Andrew's also just mentioned Masonic lodges that also currently
remember.
have a remission as a whole. Yeah, so, and I think that's historic as well. So that's on my list of review.
I think we need to review all of that. I mean, central government's reviewing the tax-free status of society, charitable status of some groups like Seventh-day Adventist Church Sanitarium, for instance, which doesn't pay any income tax because, and that's all been reviewed. I think we should look at it too. Yeah.
Successfully, can of worms opened. Well done, you. That's why we need another rates officer.
Collect all the rates that were found.
Okay, so that's good direction. We'll work on that for the 29th. So if we can move on next to the statement of proposal, we've got an hour and a half for this.
I was just going to say, I'd sent Wayne a message, but he hasn't replied to me. Do we want to take a quick break?
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
I'm back in 10 minutes, 5-2.
Stephen, you get that 10 minutes?
It's gone already.
Yep. Thank you.
So optimistic.
Ah, just a question from Stu. QE2 trust land fit into that?
It's part of the board. So QE2 trust land, we get notified by the QE2 trust that a certain amount of land has been put in into trust. And it also goes to QV, who then do a rating apportionment, so that the part of the land that you own that's under trust is non-rateable. Rest of it is rateable.
And can I just follow up from that question? If the
Sure.
If the government has proposed areas of natural significance, does that, even though it's not documented in QE2 trust, does that not come under the rating part as well?
And I haven't come across before, Stu, so I'd have to look into it for you.
There's a
And the
remission
oth-
policy
There is a remission policy for natural land.
voluntarily.
Voluntarily put into things. So I guess we can look at what we know is there, but we would have to rely on people to tell us that they fit in that category, I believe.
And the other thing is remission of Maori land, which we haven't got any in Otago. But
Yep.
if, for example, we did a joint venture with the Runanga and the coast, or maybe invested in stuff, is it bought land or only land in the settlement? And what I guess I'm saying is, if along came the Runanga on the coast and bought a solar farm, or bought into Falls Dam or a gold mine, is bought land by an iwi eligible for non-rateable? Is it non-rateable remission, I guess I'm saying, or is it only stuff that was settled?
I believe it is more Maori freehold land that is kind of like intergenerational, I believe, but so if they have purchased land for the development, I don't know that that would
No,
qualify,
it
but
doesn't qualify. I think it has to go through the Maori Land Court as well to be determined as Maori freehold land. So anything that Ngāi Tahu might do in terms of joint ventures, etc., is just a commercial transaction. That's not gone through that process.
But if they went to argument's sake and bought a big forestry block for carbon trading and then put it through that process, they're totally eligible to do that.
I think as Kelly has sort of said, it's more about the intergenerational ownership rather than the ownership by an entity. So it's more about individual ownership. So I think if the iwi are going to buy land, it's bought in their name rather than all the individuals or individuals. So I don't think it applies to that.
Maori freehold land has its own status.
It does, yeah.
So.
But my challenge to that is where does that status come if you're entitled to buy on the open market and then change its status because it's still freehold land? I guess that's my point.
Yeah, but it can't be sold like freehold land that you're thinking of.
No, but if they purchase freehold land as an iwi.
then that,
Right,
no,
it's freehold.
no, that
That's
would be-
different than it's freehold land purchased by an iwi. It's not Maori land.
Right,
Yeah.
that's all right.
The name on the title would be Ngāi Tahu Charitable, whatever the name of their
Company
entity
name.
is, yeah.
Yeah.
Rather than individuals who have held it, and then it's been passed down, et cetera, and gone through that process. So, yeah. Okay, I'll box on. I don't know whether Stephen's online yet, but I think I'll just carry on. We're going to kick into the statement of proposal, which is the document that we will be putting out to the public for consultation. It's a similar process to long-term plan process. It's you put this out, you choose your preferences, you put all the practical options in. You don't have to do every option, but your practical ones. You then go to your month's consultation. We are going to do some engagement through that process. It comes to the end of that. We go through collating the submissions. We invite submissions. We collate them. We put them in a report to council. Council makes a decision after having potentially hearings, if it wants to have those, if people want to be heard, that will happen. So it's basically a long-term plan type process. It's a special consultative process. So we have to deal with the relevant sections in the Local Government Act. So we're dealing with sections 82 to 83A. 82 deals with the principles of consultation, same as the any public consultation that we should be doing. What information we need to be putting out there is that section 82A, what the special consultative procedure is, section 83, the summary of information, section 83AA, and combined or concurrent consultation. We can do that if we had other consultations going on at the same time. Sometimes people consult, if they're consulting with their revenue financing policy, they do a concurrent consultation or a combined consultation with the LTP, so that it means that you're not necessarily having 2 or 3 consultations on the go at the same time. Next slide, thanks, Wayne. So the SOP is it's probably 85% there. There's some graphics we need to put in there. The words are we've been smithing these for couple of weeks now, backwards and forwards.
Obviously with Stephen on that structure and what needs to be in there, making it grammatically and technically correct.
Because this is potentially one of the other challenge points that we didn't cover it off properly in the SOP. So we have been using Stephen a bit. So it's really broken down into 3 sections. So the introduction, which sets the scene, and this is where we get to tell a bit of a story. Why are we doing it? What's going on in council that requires us to, well, not requires, we want to do this, etc. So we will be talking about equity, ease of understanding of our rates, and the changing needs of the district. Go into that introduction space, and it will also explain our current rating system. Then we'll move on to why. Why are we undertaking this review? So I think is important to be able to answer that question of to the ratepayers. Otherwise, they'll be asking that question. We'll be talking about that we haven't reviewed our rating system for a long time, and we've really tinkered around the edges of it. We'll also talk about water services leaving us in July 2027. And the fact that we've also had a bit of feedback from the community about equity and the ability of the understanding of our rates. We did have some specific feedback at the last LTP from Federated Farmers, and kind of looking at Federated Farmers represent a significant group of ratepayers. So that has given a bit of impetus to do this review. I'm not necessarily going to go through the document that was sent yesterday, but if you've got any questions as we're going through, there's still some graphics to add there. Move on to the next slide. Thanks, Wayne. So we talk about what we're actually proposing. So we are describing the 3 chosen options. Yep.
Sorry, on this, it's popped up a couple of times. You talk about capturing new rate and you cite fruit growers.
Yep.
But fruit growers are captured already.
Not so are utilities to a certain extent, but they're not captured fully on a capital value basis.
Yeah.
And we've been talking about
this one line, utility assets and fruit growers are included, extending the rating base. I guess in my mind, a fruit growing and orchards is in the rating base already because they're paying on the land. I can accept the utility one. I just wonder if that needs.
Page is it on?
That's on page 5 out of 10.
Are you suggesting that?
I think we're implying fruit growers don't pay rates.
Okay, so what you're saying is we need to word that a little bit.
Yeah, and then there was something above it as well, and it was just a couple of sentences in it. Sort of had the same implication that fruit growers weren't captured at the moment, but what this was going to, and I get that they will be paying more.
Yeah, okay,
But it sort of implies at the moment they're not paying at all.
yep, yep, okay, we can tighten that up a little bit.
Does that make sense when you see it?
Yeah.
It does say on page 3, though, this does mean some utility companies, fruit growers and vineyards would pay more.
Yes, yeah.
Because when you get to the after this, no pressure, Henry. Utilities do pay some rates, so we'll look at the wording to. They just don't pay.
I mean, if I was an orchardist and I read that, I'd be like, hang on a sec, they already pay rates.
We can tidy that up a little bit. So we are going to describe the 3 options chosen. We'll be dealing with option 1 as being the preferred option. And it provides greater technical detail within the 3 options. It has to be more technical to ensure that we don't face challenges. You know, it's going to be probably going to be a little bit boring for some people. We are going to add some personas in there that will introduce a person with a property and the impact of each of the options on that property throughout the document. We are in discussion. We're talking about whether we should be expanding. We're looking at probably at the moment at 4. So because it's general rate, it doesn't necessarily need to have the same breakdown because it's all on capital value. So we'll be talking a residence that's kind of lowish value, a high value residence, a farm, those types of things. And what we were thinking is, should we be breaking the rural sector down a little bit more? But then you can get too many. So it's going to be a bit of a juggling act between, I guess, I'm going to say 8 is the maximum, but between 4 and 8, where we're going to be talking about.
6.
It's between 4 and 8. So that's the type of thing that we're looking at. We're also going to really push graphically the point that we are not, this process does not get us any more money in total, which I think is really important and is going to, I think, help us answer some of the questions that the public are saying. They're just doing it to grab more money. That's not the case. So we will have some graphics in there for each of the options that will show, look, we're not getting any more money. It's going to be the same amount. So I think that's really important to put that in there as well. We also talk about.
Sorry, can I just ask on that, because I'm looking at Greg and Linda and Pete and Janet and John, and given the impact that utilities might have on that, is that where we should have, this is Bob and he owns a utility company valued at X, and then people see that there is the potential that they're going to pick up a substantial amount of that pie, depending on what the option is. Which is hard because there's not very many Bobs that own utilities companies, and we obviously don't want to be identifying any particular ones, but.
Yeah.
But Bob, who owns a share in a utility company, like, you know, and then the company he owns shares in.
I'll take advice from Stephen on this, but I'm wondering whether body of that we shouldn't shy away, I guess, is from utilities are going to pay more under option 1 and 2. And maybe we should be stating those types of things explicitly, and then leave the Bobs and the out of the personas, and just really say, look, option 1, one of the advantages of option 1 is that we anticipate the hydros and the utilities would pay X amount more, which means for the rest of the ratepayers, you will not have to contribute to that, or something around that.
Use Curtis's favourite pie graph to show, because in that one, if
Yep.
utilities are going to pick up a bigger piece of the pie, then let's show people how
Yep.
much of it they would be picking up and how much is left for the homeowners and the farm owners and the orchards.
Yep.
To split amongst them, because I think it might have a substantial impact.
Because it actually does, because that actually just puts paid to the argument that you might have seen online where the multiplier of 2, I'm going to pay twice as much rates. That doesn't occur. It occurs in the utility sector because they currently, most of it's in general rate, but they pick up a significantly bigger portion than everybody else does, which means by the time you take out solid waste, UAGC, you're left with a kind of a $10 million for residentials to pay over their capital value, and about $12 to $14 million for commercials, which isn't 10 and 20 kind of thing, you know.
I think it's not about explaining it to the utilities, but explaining it to the average.
Yeah,
ratepayer.
yeah, okay. So we'll put some graphics in and some words around. Here's how the pie looks under this option with
2 pies,
the sectors.
it's the status quo in option 1, the status quo in option 2.
Yep. Yeah, we can have a look at that. Yep. We will then talk about, so in our options, we've looked at calling them, softening the names, like option 1, capital value is not kind of, you know, so we've called it rethinking our approach to rates because that's your preferred option, and it's really what it's about.
Option 1 being preferred without pushing it. Do you want to highlight the fact that it is the most common? Right.
We could put that in as part of the preamble because option 1 and 2.
And just give some rationale behind why it's our preferred, because if you look across country, we are an outlier, and then you split the race bill up, we're even more of an outlier because we use CV on all the targeted.
Yep.
You know.
We've said that.
You've got the majority of other councils around New Zealand use.
Oh, have you got that already? Sweet.
But it might be worth reinforcing closer to the options.
Yeah, under that option 1, a wee reminder.
So the big change is switch from using land value to capital value. That's the biggest change because that will impact people the most. We will retain 2 targeted rates, actually 5 because you've got 4 ward rates and the solid waste rate. So, and then we'll adjust the uniform annual general charge. We also talk about actually, that's a good point. We don't actually, maybe we need to be a bit more in the 3 parts, getting rid of the targeted rates. Say that explicitly. So we'll talk about that and we go through the whys we're doing that and what that impact has on personas, which effectively our new sample properties, because they will be real properties that we will just pick and plug in and the number will come out for each of them, and they will be the same properties across each option, so you can see. So we've got them there. We will also, as I said, we'll have the graph that kind of, there's a graph we're going to have in there that shows the number of properties that will see an increase in rates, the number of properties that will see a decrease, and the number of properties that will see a small movement in rates, either side of the 0. Natalie?
I can put a copy of that on the screen if you like.
You can share that, it'll be great, Stephen.
Yeah. Share. So it's, what's that got? It's got me, wrong one.
It's good, yeah. We're not putting your picture in there, Stephen. Actually, we might.
That shirt's gorgeous.
Aye.
Just share it again.
Share it again. Tap. One. That one. Can you see that?
In a minute.
There we go. Yeah, so the green ones are the ones that are paying less. And that's 3 different ones.
And we'll put a little bit of an explanation around what those numbers mean in the.
It'll probably look
So,
different. to this.
That's the type of thing for each option that we're looking at putting in.
The black line being 0.
So we will also talk about the advantages and disadvantages of each option. So you can see our option 1 here. And happy to add any of the advantages or disadvantages that you might want to think about. We then will move on to the second option, which is we're calling it differentiating commercial. Because that's the only difference between option 1 and option 2 is the 2 times multiplier. So we will do the same things again, where we will have the same personas coming through, similar graphs that Stephen showed, and we will be finalising the advantages and disadvantages. We'll move on then to the third option, which is we called it keeping things, and in brackets, mostly the same, because it is the same thing that we have now. So retaining the land value as the current rating model. We keep targeted rates for community facilities, waste and libraries. We will adjust the UAGC to 30%. There's one other thing that we will probably have to do.
That fruit grower thing's popped up in there again.
Sorry, the
Fruit growers.
yeah. I think we. The last point that I need to add to this is that some of the community facilities rate, which is currently all fixed, we don't have enough general rate and UAGC to meet the 30% requirement. Some of the uniform charge for the community facilities rate will have to become a variable rate and go on the value. The 3 waters being in there, we didn't have to do that, and we decided that we were going to charge the fixed rate across the board. Last LTP, that will change this time round. We will have to put some variable rate in there for community facilities to enable us to. 30%.
How much for a fee? As a percentage of
Models.
what, 10% of the charge?
No, it's about nearly 700. So it drops about $200 odd. It's about 20 odd %. Because currently we only have a UAGC of 107. Yeah. So and that's because our general rate's not very high. We've got everything else is in targeted rates.
Yeah.
So we have to change that.
I don't have the percentages in front of me. I thought I did have them, but.
So it's going down from 987 to 696.
Yeah, so it's about 60-30.
Yeah,
That's right.
32%.
Yeah.
Wow.
And yeah, sorry, Karen. Go on.
You know, that's right. I was just looking at the overarching numbers. So it's about $15 million worth of rates to be collected. And so we'll have 10 million as a fixed charge. Million will drop to the variable.
That again, sorry.
So it's about 15 million to be collected through the community's facilities charged at the moment.
Yeah, 10 and 5, sweet.
So those are the 3 options. Those are the types of things we're looking at putting in. And we will have those ready to go next week for kind of discuss it late next week, because it will need to go to legal for review to make sure we've covered everything off. But we'll have to have it completed as possible to the final product. So yeah, it's and it will basically invite comment and basically what do you think type of thing from ratepayers and this coupled with the tool that we're going to be talking about shortly,
Those other questions, we
we can add those as a separate part of it. Yeah.
that way, do you have to bring it back to council to,
In terms of the questions or the,
if we want them and what they look like?
oh, we'll do that as part of the, it'll be part of the potential part of the consultation document, and it'll be bits underneath it that will be, we also would like your views on whatever, and we'll get those questions finalised, and you guys will adopt it part of the 29th. It won't necessarily form part of the statement of proposal, because you can, in terms of those types of things, have other items that you might want to talk about. Got to be very careful though. You don't want to swamp.
No,
What
totally
we're trying to
agree.
get
Totally
here.
agree. This is enough for just anyway.
The other thing you could do is leave those things till the next LTP, which they would have to go through that process anyway. And make whatever changes you want to make at that time. Just food for thought, you could do it whatever you want to do. The document then has a bit of a glossary that we'll add to as we need to, because we talk a lot of techie stuff in here, land value, capital value. It's important for people to understand what those things are. We then talk about the timeline and what happens next, which I think we've got a couple of slides after to talk about our engagement process. We'll get those things finalised, and then as to how to have your say. So this is, as I say, it's about 85% there. We're just looking at, we'll make those changes that you've asked for. There's some graphics that need to go in, which I think will help explain some stuff. But that is effectively the statement of proposal that finalise and get to you guys by the 29th. Or the 20th, yeah, it'll be on the council papers. Is there any, I mean, you've said a couple of things. Is there any other questions or comments given the documentation that you've received? I do appreciate that, that it did come out late, and if you have another look at it and you want to make any changes or suggest stuff, send an email and we'll do that.
Paul,
Hi. Stephen, yes.
yeah, just in addition to the statement of proposal, there will be a list of other things that we have done and the information from our workshops and so on that will, for those that want to go deeper than what's in the statement of proposal, that information will be available linked to the statement of proposal and on the website somewhere.
So that's why we don't have to put 13 options in there. We can deal with 3. We will have the supporting documentation for the 13 that you discussed over your workshops. We'll have the recordings there.
Whole lot.
The whole lot will be there for anybody who wants to have a look deeper into it. So that's that. If we move on to engagement. So this is the proposed review, the information and drop-in sessions. I'll hand over to Paul and Anne.
Yeah, so these dates and venues are locked in. We've put this message in the rates newsletter, as part of the rates newsletter, the first rates demand. So they'll get, our rate payers will get this mid-July, like next couple of weeks.
By the time it's posted, for those that are posted.
They're publicly available now.
Publicly available now. Yep. And that's just on our Let's Talk page. So we've got a Let's Talk page built in and public now too. And we'll just keep building and adding and supporting information, other bits and pieces as it comes to us. And so so that's all ready to go. They're booked in and that's what we're committing to. You might find that you have people that you hear of that go, oh, we would love you to come and talk to our group in August. If you can just pass that through and we can see if we can make ourselves available. Because I think this is our base and I'm hoping it'll grow a little bit.
Will this go through to the email group? I don't know how many people are on it for the snapshot group as well.
Yes, it will. And then we'll go out beginning of August. We're just mindful that we're still in July and we just need to make sure we hit people at the right times.
Some chance.
Yes. Yeah.
Next slide, please.
Next slide. The other thing, so what we're doing in July this month is we've just got a list of entities that we are trying to get contact details for, to send them an email to say this is coming. Keep an eye out, so that we just raise awareness. So right now, this is what we're in, is trying to get hold of contact details for these people and send them. We've talked about how trying to even hit the right person in those entities so that it doesn't end up in a customer services front desk and doesn't work its way through. So
We could probably help you with that.
we would be so grateful. Rachel's working on that and doing an amazing job. But any contact details that you know of that could create input and injection into these entities would be amazing.
Yeah, the other thing is that previous slide, staff will be able and available to support you, whoever's going to these things, that we'll make staff available to come along and explain the technical stuff and whatnot. So I guess I drew the short straw for the evening meetings, but that's okay. The rest of the guys will be doing the day stuff. So you won't be on your own if people start asking technical questions, or we'll be able to demonstrate the plan is to demonstrate the thing we're going to talk about next, so that we'll have it connected up wirelessly. So if we can put valuation numbers in, and it will help people go through, oh, that's not a bad impact for me, or whatever. So we'll be able to do that.
Our team would be keen to work with elected members on PowerPoint presentations for those drop-ins and sessions to make sure we've got the content flow and information that's needed.
I guess when you get this PowerPoint, if there's anybody else you think you want to talk to, let us know so we can do it. It's going to be fair. It's going to be a big effort to get across all these people, but
This is just emailing. We're not going
Yeah.
to see all these people. This is just an email out to raise awareness so that people don't tell us in 3
I
months' time.
suspect you'll get invites, so that's the thing. You know,
Go with a few different locations and times and things with the drop-in sessions, and some of those people that don't always get captured.
Is there a in there, whether is there anything, is there a group that deals with an overarching body for builders construction?
Maybe got
Because I'm not seeing builders and construction in there.
and grey power.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we'll pop them down.
I don't know if there
Great
is.
Power will be, I anticipate, hosting their own
Yeah.
meeting. They usually, like the likes of Great Power, sometimes Lions, and that will go along to as well.
I suspect that we'll need to talk and go and see farming fraternity, and whether we can get the whole
Bullshit
6 or
meetings.
7 of them together, the top 6 or 7 on there. We'll definitely need to go and talk to the wine growers. They've already indicated their interest in it, so I suspect that, especially since the valuation changes will impact them. So I think we'll end up doing that. I'm not sure that we'll end up having those types of meetings with Transpower and Contact. That'll be more of a here in CE level thing. So, yeah, it's going to be, I guess it's going to be, once they're made aware of it, it's whether we get the invite, and maybe we should be asking them if, you know, we'd love to come and talk to you about it, because it will be for it's in the best book. Anyway.
Wayne, can you share the rest of those files with us
Yeah.
all? Thank you.
So are there any other questions on our engagement space? I think we've got that pretty well covered. It's going to be a busy, probably 6 to 8 weeks, I think. I think we don't want to be in a position where we get accused you didn't come and see us. Because that potentially is going to give people an opportunity to have a crack.
And we've been spreading it far and wide. Every community group I've been to lately, I've told them this is coming. I talked about it again on the radio this morning, but we are letting people know. Pay attention, something's coming, you'll want to see, and then once it does land, just making it as easy as possible for them to understand what it means for them.
Currently, we're hearing people saying, yep, I've heard. But if you hear people that haven't heard, can you let us know? Because that's probably a sector that we might need to tap into.
So given that, that's all I wanted to talk about in terms of the statement of proposal. We can move on to the next bit. Wayne? Yeah, I think it's Wayne's still, you're cutting it. Making it PE. Am I? Sorry? Am I? Yeah, Chris, this is the rates calculator.
Start trying to close out. Very good.